Start now. Perfect. So to actually introduce our panel, first up, we've got Mrs. Ottilia Shone. She has a passion to empower young people and women to live their lives to the fullest. She has more than 17 years of working with women and young people, 11 of those here in Australia. She gladly accepted the opportunity to discuss the Lobola and the Roora process because it has become a huge challenge for people, and she has noticed that parents and young people alike are having this discussion. And then we've got Mr. Pastor Mutseriwa. He's the pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he's interested in the Roora and the Lobola process because the question of traditional wedding cannot be adequately answered without appealing to Christianity and the Bible. And as a pastor, he feels he has something to contribute. Then we've got Heather Murindi. Heather is also known as Vatete by some. She's a social worker who joined this discussion because she wants to contribute to the preservation of our cultural customs. Heather said that some people don't know where we're coming from, so it cannot change or evolve and be relatable to them. So if discussions like this don't happen, it will be a loss. Then next, we've got Levi Mfofu, who has previously been wedded via Shona customs. Levi is Ndebele and well-versed in the traditions and customs, acting as a Sadomo and Idomo, which is a medium for his family. Levi's role as a Sadomo and Idomo has benefited Shona women who he has represented marrying into a Ndebele family, and both families have felt represented. Then lastly, we've got Mr. Nemiseso. Mr. Nemiseso is our community elder who has so much enriched knowledge and can contribute to this conversation. Now, without further ado, I would like to ask, well, I'll start off by defining what I think Roora and Lobola is, and then I'll put it to the panelists and see what they have to say about it. So my understanding of Roora really is that it is a traditional wedding process that is amongst two families coming together. And essentially, there's a lot of, I guess, things and processes in between, which I still don't know what they are, but essentially it's about uniting the family. So what do you guys think? Am I hitting the nail on the head, or am I a little bit off the mark there? Let me start with Mr. Nemseso. I think you can contribute well to this.
Unomboregera vana vachitaura tozogadzirisana regai vechidiki vambotanga tione.
All right. And that one way. So maybe Mr. Mteriwa, let's start with you. As a pastor, what do you think the Roora wedding process is? I used the word specifically for a reason.
All right. You are in the right track in your definition. Let's separate two things, though. My understanding of this conversation is that we are talking about the Roora, Lobola process, rather than the wedding. So we have a separate wedding. I mean, rather as wording, word for the wedding ceremony and the marriage ceremony. The marriage is Roora ukulobola. Then we have another one for the wedding, umtimba kana kuti muchato. Now that is the wedding. So what we are really specifically talking about right now is not the umtimba or mchato. We are focusing on ukuvelelwa kana kubvisa maroro. That's the focus. But you were in the right track. Let me drop it there and leave it for others to correct me too if I'm not in the right track.
No, that's great. I actually think you've touched on something there, and I would actually like Levi to add more to that, because I know Levi has quite a bit to talk about the Roora process, having gone through it as well.
Well. Thank you, Tracy. And I think for the sake of clarity, you'll find that I might be putting in or mixing English language and Ndebele, because there's some words in the Ndebele language that I cannot convert to English. But however, for those that might miss the explanations or might want to put another different way, that's okay. You're free to interject at any point. I think it is very important to really put like a full context to the best of my ability and of also to the extent of the time that you have given me to say that it all begins in the boy's house. Two people have fallen in love and they've advanced to the extent that they feel they can marry each other and have a family like anybody else. The starting point is the boy goes to his father. So I'm actually talking this from the Ndebele context, which I grew up in, which I understand. It could be practically similar to the Shona one. I don't know as yet. But the boy would go to the father. That's exactly what I did. You go to your father, and then your father, you actually go to your father to tell them that you're interested in this girl and you want to marry. And your father will sit down with you to confirm if you're really serious. And then once you confirm, I know there's going to be a lot of things that are said and discussed there. Fast forward, your father or my father will then go to the people that we refer to abalingani. I'm not sure some other people have got some other names. Those are the people that are like, in short, I think Madzisawira, where they would go there to bring them together, the selected ones, to tell them about the story that I want to marry this girl from this family. Now, those people form a team of Abantu Ochong Abakungi. That's a team that will then take the journey and the word to go Uyovela. I think Pastor Mtsero talked about that a little bit. Uyovela is to show that you're really interested in this girl. Now, when you get there, traditionally, you don't get, obviously, the word would have gone that. So when you get there, you are now, you don't get inside the house, you actually stay outside the fence or at the perimeter of the whole fence. The reason why you do that is you need to actually seek permission to get in. At times, even if you go there, they might not even like you, or maybe they might not even like your family or my family. So they can chase you away. They can actually get dogs. They can set dogs in you and they'll chase you away if they don't like you or if they're angry. But if you're very fortunate, of which in most cases, it's always fortunate that you can actually get in. And then before you can do anything, before they can actually talk to you, you got to pay something which they call in some instances, you can actually pay the amount to get inside the yard, and then you sit down. Before you can talk, you pay another amount, which is also which means for you to talk to them. And then when you go there, you pay those amounts, and then you start explaining yourself to say, why exactly are you here? Tracy, can I use your name just for the sake of illustration? They will say to you, Tracy, do you know these people? Because I would have come in and say, we're here because of Tracy, we're here, want to marry her. Your own family will then confirm whether you really know these people. And then upon you confirming that you really know, that's when they will then accept that then we can start all the other proceedings to do with the proper marriage, where they will then construct a list of payments, which we call dowry, which includes either cows, money, or any other artifacts that they think are very valuable. Now, in all this, why are they doing this? It's because they value their daughter. It's a value that they placed on their daughter traditionally, because it is believed that the daughter is the one who makes their home. They're a homemaker. So that's why you're so valuable. That's why all these amounts that they charge on the person. And then after that, what follows, which Pastor Zero said,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry, Levi. Before you go on, because I think it's fantastic that you've started talking about the process, but I
Yeah.
think just let's step it back a little bit, just in
Yeah.
regards to what actually, where did this concept of Roora and Lobola actually come from? Because I love how you've started going into the process. It's intriguing and making sure,
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's very interested to hear more about it, but I would also like to hear a little bit more about what other people might think, or what they think the Roora process sort of came from, who actually developed it. So
I think
would just
Mr.
jump to,
Mr. Nemesis will be able to explain that.
I'll jump to Mr. Nemseso so I can hear, we can hear this. Yeah.
Okay, mazvita. Nekuda kwekuti paradzana kutsanangurira, ndinodaira kuti dambudziko raunza meeting idambudziko riri kusangana nevana vedu kuti vanzwisise kuti Roora kana kuti Lobola chii. Inini ndopandandiri kuti totanga kwekutanga kuti tinobvira kupi. Saka ndanga ndakati inini tsika dzedu nemagariro pakanga paine matanho tisati tasvika kuRoora ratiri kutaura nezvaro. Pakanga paine nyaya yenhumbi. Ndiri kuitira kuti vana, kana muchitsanangurira vana vari kuda kunzwisisa nezvekuti sei tiri kubvisiswa Roora, pakanga paine nyaya yenhumbi yaibviswa. Nhasi tochiti ndiyo nyaya ye-engagement ring. Kare mukomana aipa musikana wake hembe, musikana opawo mukomana wake kana blouse. That was the engagement yakanga iriko, yaizopirwa vatete both sides kuti ndine musikana wangu wandinoda kuroora. Vaibvunza kuti tingazvizive sei kuti une musikana wauri kudanana naye, tingazive sei kuti akakuda. Musikana wachinzi tingazive sei kuti mukomana uyu akakuda. Ndo paibuda nyaya dzenhumbi. But nhasi hazvichataurika zvenhumbi, kakutaurika nyaya yekuti engagement. Saka inini ndo pandiri kuona kuti tingatange kudzidzisana nevana here vanzwisise kwatakabva nako, nekuti zvakare Roora isusu vechirudzi cheZimbabweans as a whole, tsika nemagariro edu hazvina kunyanya kusiyana nemajuta. Saka mukaona inimi kuti Roora rakaitwa institute naMwari, ndingambomira ndakadaro tozotsanangura mavhesi evanhu vakasevenzera Roora kuti mhuri dzatinadzo duku dzakuno kuAustralia dzinzwisise kuti chirongwa chaMwari, kwete kuti cheZimbabwean culture, chirongwa chakabva kuna Mwari. Ndombomira ndakadaro.
No, thank you so much. That was powerful. Just to know this is our itika yedu, and it's coming from a deep and meaningful place. I think that's very important to remember and to know. I guess now I'll just sort of spin it a little bit and try to hear from Heather about what her belief and thoughts around Roora is before we sort of get to the nitty-gritty about the processes.
Okay. As someone who hasn't gone through the process, my understanding from the research that I've done, and I've gone back and asked the elders in my family to fully understand the scope of where Roora has originated from. And from them, it came from basically Bible times, when there's a point in time where it changed, but I'll get to there a little bit later. But it started from, back in the Bible, where a father would want to marry, would see that his son has grown and would want to marry him off to someone who was worthwhile. So the father would then send servants or send the son with a dowry, right? And say, please marry my son. We'll go and send that delegation, right? And then the wife and the family will agree to say, this is, we agree or we do not agree. And then from whatever they've been sent, they will pick what they required and come back. That's in the Bible context. And I'm sure the pastor can clarify if I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong. And then moving on to the Shona culture, my understanding is after the jacket, which is the cloth that Mr. Nemses was talking about, the badge, basically the jacket, the man's jacket has been exchanged. What was given was a badza, which is a hoe. And it wasn't just anything, it was a thing of value that was used for the rest of that family's life, because we were farmers and that's what we did as Shona people. So that badza will carry that family for the rest of their life. And you wouldn't just go to anybody to make it for you. There were specific people who were making these, who were higher up in society, that were dedicated to making these tools so that they can actually last a long time. So yeah. And then I'm not so sure where it has changed to say that it is now the woman's family who's now asking for, you know, the things to come, when it was just, you know, I've come to marry, this is my token, my value of token. Do we accept or not? So yeah.
I think that's a great point you've already started raising, Heather. And I would like to now sort of hear from Mrs. Shone as well about what she thinks about the changes that have also happened from the past to now, because it's, as everyone has mentioned, there's been a few changes, especially with the whole Numbi things. So yeah, let's try to hear from Mrs. Shone.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting that Heather has said in her research she has been told and given these connections between the Roora and Bible times and the Bible. But then it raises a question in me, which I think maybe all other young people may then get, like, okay, if Roora is connected to the Bible, to Christianity, what about before Christianity came? Because our culture existed before Christianity came into our culture. We had other ways of doing things. I'm just interested in knowing, maybe if Pastor Mteriwa Baba Nemseso can shed a bit more light, or even Levi, that before Christianity, what was happening? Does anybody have an idea? Because that point came in and I'm just thinking, oh, okay, what about before Christianity? Did we have Roora? What was happening then? Did we have Lobola?
Sorry, can I just add to her question as well?
Mm-hmm.
Or was one there before the other? Or were they happening in
Can you
parallel?
clarify the question one more time, Heather? Clarify your question. Was one there before the other?
Yeah, so just adding, like, was Christianity there before Roora, or was Roora there before Christianity? Or were they working in conjunction with each other?
Can I jump in here? When we trace the history of the people that are living in the southern part of Africa, that includes the Shona people, the Zulu, the Ndebele, what we call the Bantus. We come from a place that is historically known as Dahomey, but that is more recent history. We know it in Shona as Guru Swa. Now, that is an area around Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, around that Eastern Africa part, Central Eastern Africa part. That's where we have come from. That's our cradle and if you ask some people, they can actually tell you the original person who came from that place and came there. Talk to the Moyondizo people, they would tell you that we are the original ones. If you were talking about it from the Shona perspective, if you listen in the Ndebele culture, which comes from the Zulu, they can actually trace it from there, crossing the rivers Zambezi, right to the southern part of Africa. Now, interestingly, the earliest record outside of oral tradition that we have of this group of people living in this place called Dahomey. If you were the other side, say in the Middle East, you'd be talking about these people living beyond the two rivers of Africa, of Ethiopia. Ethiopia just means a place. Not now we talk when we say Ethiopia, we really mean the people that live in Eastern Africa. But originally it just means the people of the bent faces. The Greeks were looking at the blacks and saying they are bent faces. That's what it means, a bent face, the black people. We have the earliest record we have is 700 BC, written record, written by the prophet Isaiah, writing about the people that are beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. That is Dahomey. Now, if you did history in Zimbabwe, you would have met a book called African Heritage, Book 1, and there was Book 2. You would have met what was called the Egyptian Shaduf, that told a story of this group of people known as the Egypt and Cushites. Now, the Cushites were the sons, they are descendants of Cush. Now, whether you want to believe in the Bible as a spiritual book, as a Christian book or not, that's another story. But we can corroborate the biblical story with diggings in archaeology, and we find that it is true. That's why a historical and academic book in Form 1 talks about a people that are called the Cushites, and we study Egypt and Cush. So here is the connection that we have. In fact, when Abraham and his children are marrying, it is not exactly a biblical culture. It's not being explained as a prescription. It is being explained as a description of a societal norm that was there at that time, that these black people that live beyond the rivers of Africa, of Ethiopia, that is at Dahomey, were also practicing. So this is the origin. These are our origins. Is it a bad culture? I think we are coming to there, and here we are just talking about the origins of. It is mentioned descriptively. I doubt that it is prescriptive.
No, that's a great word right there. Great word. And I think I would like to do more. Sorry?
Tracy. Oh, sorry, Tracy. I want to merge quickly with, I won't take much of your time with Pastor Mtseriwa to actually put a full context to the Ndebele side of things. I know there's that common, which I call a common misconception, that the Ndebele and the Zulus, they sort of came from one another. They're two different sub-tribes in the Nguni. So they're all Abantu Nguni. There's the Ndebele, the Soto, the Pedi, all those kind of people. They're all totally different. So they all, Ndebeles, the modern day Ndebeles were the ones that crossed over towards us. So they brought the actual marriage culture from South Africa. So pretty much you find that it's quite similar to the Shona one, because over time you sort of really, it's exactly the same as African people, but they were very minor kind of changes as we went by. As you will see now that we've all migrated to this country, that's going to change as well as we go forward.
Thanks for that, Levi. I think it's good to sort of understand nuances at times. So just moving a little bit forward and coming back to the process aspect of things, because everyone's already started talking about process. Obviously, we know that there's differences in how it's been developed, but I know we had gone to the part where we were at the woman's house and people have already started sort of asking for permission. So who would like to elaborate more about what actually happens once the man has actually gone to the woman's house? I will pick on someone. Mrs. Shone.
I may not be very well. I can only speak from probably personal experience, not really from having gone obviously to someone's house, but from the experiences that I've had, because I've also gone through the process of Roora. Like in my culture where I come from, it involves the tetes. Like the tetes would communicate. My aunties are the ones that my husband spoke to, that he intended to marry me. And my aunties then went and spoke to their brother, who is my father. And then they would sit and obviously come up with a list of what they expected. And in my culture, my father does not see my husband until he has actually paid the bride price. He would only see the aunties. That's where it would end. And so when by the time they come, they already have the list. Like, so I was given the list of what they should expect. My tetes would give my husband the list. So when they come, they sort of have an idea of what they are expected to bring, including the groceries. This is from my personal experience. And when they would come in, my husband and his father did not even come into our house. They were put at a neighbor's house and they stayed there. Only the Munyai came in, and my husband's uncle came in, and they sat, and his aunt, and they sat, and the process went on. Only after the process is completed and they are satisfied, then they would say he can come in, and then he came in with his father. But this is after what was on the list. After my parents had been satisfied by what he had brought from what was on the list. It wasn't necessarily everything that was on the list, but it was something that they could accept, like, okay, he has done well, so we are prepared to meet him now as our Kwasha or Mkwenyana. This is what happened when I got married. And I've sort of witnessed almost the same, slight differences, but I think it's almost the same amongst the people that I've witnessed getting married. So this is the process that I know. But obviously, with coming to the diaspora, with now children marrying here, the process has kind of also changed a little bit, I think, to suit the culture that we live in the diaspora.
No, that's a great point, actually. And I think I'd like to hear more about, I guess, from the people that identify as men, just to sort of understand what they feel and what they go through when they're actually on the other side as well. And then on top of that, yeah.
I just wanted to quickly add two things to this.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, there is a word that my Shone has just introduced here, Munyai. Depending on where you come from, even within the Shona culture, we also use the word Sadombo. In the Ndebele culture, it's Idombo. And it's practically a go-between. This is something that is important. Why I want to mention this is because often when the young people are getting married here, they have to look for this person. So it's important for us to throw that in. So if you were going to come and marry my daughter, you have to find someone who knows how to talk to me. So you just don't select someone I don't know. You know, it's Mpofu who was talking about, you know, setting dogs on you. If you bring someone that I don't know, I might set dogs on you. Whether it's going to be literally setting dogs on you, or even metaphorically, I might just close. But if you send my Mzukuru Mashingaidze, he has a way of going around me, and he knows where my buttons are. If you send my Mningina Pastor Shone, he knows how to go around me. So you have to select every time when this Dombo or Idombo or Sadombo or Mnyai was selected. It's not someone you have come with from Rewa and you're going to marry in Rusape. You find that person in Rusape within the vicinity of your in-laws, a person who knows the family that you are marrying into, and they will plead for you. So that's number one. Number two, I just wanted to throw in something there where we are talking about, Maishon also brought in another angle from another culture within the Zimbabwean community, where Mkwenya and Mkwasha does not see the Vatejara until the day of marriage. Actually, in the Ndebele culture, akulocholwa mfazi kulocholwa abantwana. We don't marry the woman, we marry children. That changes the whole argument that Roora stands to put down the woman. It's buying the woman. Nope. We are marrying children. We are not marrying the woman. Think about it. Let me leave it there for further conversation.
That's a very good point there, Mr. Mtero, because there's always mostly there's an undercover covert operation that takes place in the Ndebele culture, where as a man, if I've got a girlfriend that I would want to marry, I've got to make sure that they're pregnant, they've got a child before I can actually marry them, because you can't just marry someone who doesn't have kids, because there's no evidence that they will actually have some offspring. But that's always off the shelf. It's never said in public. It's always hidden for some reason, and quite often mothers know better in that area. And the other thing I wanted to explain is when Pastor Mterewa talked about why we need someone who knows Mr. Mterewa better to come and negotiate as Idombo, is because to a father, a girl child is a soft spot. This is where you find men are vulnerable when it comes to a girl child. They're actually the weakest, and mothers are actually the strongest. This is where the father can actually shed tears, because the precious girl is going and giving it to another man. No wonder why you have to be very delicate with the father when you're handling these issues. No wonder why you need someone who knows them so they can babysit their emotions during that hard time. It's actually a difficult time. Thank you.
No, I think that's a great angle that was sort of introduced there. And I think I want to direct this to Baba Nemseso, because I would like to also know, and I'm sure other people have the same thought, where did this whole concept of the liaison, so Ana Idombo, and like, where did that come from? Sorry, Baba Nemseso, if you can just unmute. Yeah. Perfect. Whilst we wait for him, can I he's here. Perfect.
Atsanangurwa nemuzukuru wangu Maishone pekuti matambudziko avari kusangana nawo iye zvino ndiwo andiri kufunga kuti inini vana tiri mumba tinganyatsovatsanangurira here maitiro edu kusvikira tazosvika pekuti kwakuenda kunoroorwa, sekuti vana dzimwe mari dziri kutaurwa vanoona kuti mari haisi ingatokwana deposit yemba here, tapagadzirisa here kuti tivatsanangurire vanzwisise kuri kubva nyaya yeroora, nekuti vana vanoda kuudzwa vachinzwisisa. Zvanasa mukuru zvataurwa inini ndazvinzwa hongu, tikanga tichivaudza mumba kuti kwawakuenda kumwanangu kunotoda vanhu vakajairana nesu, vonzwisisa kubva kunesu isu vabereki vevana. Saka tikarega kutsanangurira vana mumba, vanonozvitsanangurirwa kuti kunyange vachida vasingade ngativataurire maitirwo eroora. Nekuti kana dai mukatarisa kuroora kwaita Jacob, Leah naRachel akashandira 14 years, imari in modern times dzeroora. Saka tinenge tichida kufamba nevana vachinziona zvakaitika. Tarisa kudhura kana kusadhurisirwa paroora, vanzwa kushoko raMwari kuti kune vakadhurisirwa. Tikazosvika zvedu kunana Samukuru nanachi, nyaya huru ndofunga iri pamari dziri kuchajwa kuti vana vane question mark. Ameno kana ndatsanangura zvakanaka zvemunomu.
And I think just even from that as well, you then get to a new stage, YOT. How can we actually get to those conversations with the kids? Like, are they going to be interested in hearing these conversations? So Heather, I ask you as someone who will be going through the process, what sort of information would you like to know?
For me, it's not about I want to know everything. As somebody who has grown outside of Zimbabwe, where you don't have the vatete to tell you and stuff like that, right? So it's my duty as a young person to go to my parents and ask them, what's our culture on these things? Like na Nemseso is actually quite true, that a lot of kids grow up outside, especially if they're kids like me who are sort of like the bridge, who came with their parents or came after their parents, who had grown up a little bit there but spent most of their life here. They have a little bit of link, but not enough to know the intricacies of it. And then after us, the ones that were born outside of the country, who know zero to nothing of the culture. And so you get people saying things like, oh, I don't want to marry a Zim girl because they're expensive, or I don't want to get married because it's like selling me. Because our parents essentially haven't sat down and spoken to us about this. And I think it's very important that we should not blame it completely on our parents, but also on us to say, have we as young people gone and asked our parents, hey, what about this thing called Roora? Like, when it comes to marriage, what it is. And I think on our parents' side as well, it's very important to say, oh, it's this phrase that I've heard a couple of times by some people who say, hausati washika panyaya yachona tichazokudza kana wasvika tichazokudza kana wakura. Like, we're going to tell you later on when you get to that bridge. But when I get to that bridge, it'll be too late for me to understand, for me to fully have developed enough questions to ask you as parents. So I think all parents need to really, if they don't know themselves, they need to find somebody else who does. Because there has to be somebody in the family, extended or internal, who will be able to help you tell your child about this whole process and how it goes within your family, because it does differ with families. But we'll talk about the pricing a little bit later.
Can I say that I also wanted to jump in now as a parent, and take on board what our elder Nemseso and Heather is bringing onto the table, and say these conversations. I actually want to thank Zima maybe and say thank you for bringing this kind of a conversation, because these are things that we're taking for granted. I want to bring in a word called identity. Why I embrace Roora, it is because of who I am. That's my identity. And there are narratives out there that we listen to borrow a phrase from Heather. Don't marry Zimbabwean chicks, they are expensive. It is a narrative that has come from elsewhere. So we need to revisit who we are. I don't know how to be with any other culture if I don't know who I am. I'm toxic when I have a low self-esteem about my own culture and latch on to other people's cultures. So let's backtrack a little bit there and say we need our children to know that even if they're going to marry an Indian, even if they're going to marry a Fijian, they are Zimbabwean, and there are norms and culture that come with that. It's going to evolve. It's going to evolve because we are now a certain breed of Zimbabweans. We are creating a new identity because this thing is dynamic. This thing of culture, it's dynamic. But it starts with, it is important for your self-esteem to know who you are and hold on to a culture that is not toxic. And I believe that Maroro, Lobola, by the way, it's not just the Shonas and the Ndebeles. We've got the Tonkas. Barakwata Bafaz, Banakas. That is the Tonga. We've got the Sutu, Kunyala Msadi. They have different ways. We've got the vendors, we've got the kalangas, we've got in Jambezi area there, we've got the Lozis and other cultures that are within our Zimbabwean culture. It's a diverse culture. When you're talking about Maroro, you have to know what exactly you're talking about. From a Ndebele culture, from a Zimbabwean, from a Shona culture, from a Kalanga culture, what does that mean? So when someone says to pay Lobola is to buy a woman, that is not our narrative. It is not.
Yeah,
it is somebody else looking into the culture and saying that.
I would like to cut in there a little bit, Pastor Mteriwa, and say, like you rightfully said, that it's a narrative that is coming from somewhere. But unfortunately for us, it's not only a narrative that is coming from somewhere as in outside us as a people, but it's also coming from within us, meaning from within amongst our children. They don't even hear it from somebody else, but amongst themselves, because there is all these different ways of charging the Roora or Lobola. And the girl child that I interact with, that I talk with, feels that this process of Lobola commodifies them. It makes them commodities on the market. It is the children themselves that are saying this, because they hear of these different ways of charging, and to their understanding, because our children use these things, they Google things. And if you Google Roora on this phone, it will tell you that it is a token of appreciation. So that's what our children know, because we are, as parents or as a people, are not having these conversations that we have started to have now to make the children understand the dynamics of our culture. So they don't understand. So from within amongst themselves, they are saying, Roora commodifies me, that's the girl child. And then what does the boy child say? The boy child, I had a very interesting conversation today with young people after church when I said, okay, what's your take on Roora? Very, very interesting. One of them says, oh, the commodity, because the girl child is feeling I'm being commodified, and the boy child is saying, but the girl that I am marrying, that I am paying Lobola for or Roora for, is not the same as our mothers. Our mothers were good women. And I was like, whoa, 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 where are we going with this? What do you mean your mothers were good women? So are you saying they were worth the price because they were good women, and the young girls now are not worth the price because they were good women? So you see the lack of understanding around this, that our children feel like you rightfully said, that they feel like paying Roora or Lobola is paying because it's a bride price. I'm paying the bride price, and the bride must be worth the price. And the bride is also saying, I'm being commodified because now the boy looks at me and thinks I must be worth the price. So this is what is happening with the young people, and we don't talk about it. We wait until they are dating, they have someone in their life, then we say, oh, they have to pay Roora. And they're starting, what is this Roora? So these conversations, we need to make our children understand, because I, for one, when I got married, I didn't really understand what it was, but I just knew because it's my culture, my husband has to come and pay the bride price. But the dynamics were slightly different. Our children now are very inquisitive. They are not like us. When we were growing up, if our parents say jump, we just asked how high. But now our children, if you say jump, they need to know why they're going to jump before they jump. It's not like they're not going to jump. They will eventually jump, but they need to understand why they are jumping.
And I think that's a fantastic way to close off this panel discussion, because I think you have answered quite a lot of questions that I had.
Can I just say something quickly?
How quick? Because I would like to get the audience.
Give me a minute. Give me a minute.
I'll give you a minute. On time now.
All right. I think we have not adequately answered the question of what Lobola is, if we have not looked into the spiritual aspect of it from our own culture, if we've not looked into, because to any identity of a human being, there is the social aspect, there is the spiritual aspect, there is the psychological aspect. These, we needed to have looked at them. For example, what it means. If you have not paid from a spiritual aspect, it's not necessarily my spirituality that I subscribe to, but it is there within the Zimbabwean culture. If you have not paid Mombeye Umai, it follows you spiritually. So there is a spiritual aspect to all these things. It's not just, of course, I know that we've commercialized it. I could talk about the spirituality of marriage of Lobola from a Christian perspective, that if it is something to do with a social norm of honoring the parents, that I'm honoring the life that we are getting to perpetuate the Mtseriwa family. Because within our society, when I marry, the children that we are giving birth to, anodaidzwa nemtupo kwamakoni, where I am, avadaidzwa nemtupo kwamlido, where the child, where my wife comes from. So there is this exchange of identity that we are honoring, not paying. There is no price to a human being. We're not paying for. There is this honoring of this human being that we are doing. That brings shame. If I lack integrity from a Christian perspective, that from a norm that is expected within my culture, then I'm not a good Christian. I'm not a good citizen. So that is the spirituality of marriage from a Christian perspective. We could talk about it from the Shona culture, and stuff like that. There is also a requirement there to please your spirits. That's why if you have not paid Mombeo Mai, it follows you. It closes the womb, things like that.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you very much. And I think it's great that you add that spiritual element as well. Just for the sake of time, and again, disclaimer, definitely, like Pastor said, we didn't actually get into a very deep and in-depth conversation because this is a superficial and a start to actually have these conversations. And with that being said, let us open the floor to anyone who has any questions for the remaining 9 minutes. So I will be happy to take any questions. You can put the hand up sort of symbol if you'd like to answer a question verbally, or I will also I was following the conversation in the chat, so I could see some of the questions that were being asked. So if no one has put their hand up just yet, I will ask what was asked before. So someone mentioned, how did this, oh no, I think we covered that. So essentially, I think this person was referring to those who are not Christians. How does the Roora and the Lobola still fit with those people that are not Christian?
I did use the Bible, but I was following an anthropology, the history of the Zimbabwean people, where that comes from. And the earliest document we know that mentions us. Whether we want to accept the spirituality of the book, but the fact of the matter remains that they are recording, it's a record of a people that the author, Isaiah, collided with at his time, 700 years BC. And we find that these people were interacting with other cultures that already had the idea of Lobola. So that's where we get it from. The Abrahamic cultures, the Hebraic culture, and going beyond Abraham to maybe, if you like, other cultures that I mentioned, Egypt and Kush. These are where we come from. This is our cradle. We can trace that these people were intermarrying and they were praying. They were paying bridal price. And I use the word bridal price very loosely. I don't think it should be called bridal price. It's somebody else's worldview, not ours.
No, definitely a good point. And I can't see any hands up at the moment, but I guess another question that I did see was, it was in relation to the engagement part of the Numbi, which was like obviously between the men and the women before exchanging clothes. But essentially this person said, where does engagement fit in now, considering how it's changed over time and that it's a lucrative process, but how do we cater for the element of surprise and respect to the process and the parents?
I would actually like to answer that. I think that process of engagement kind of needs to, if you know you're going to ask your person, there is a process I think that we all sort of have missed, which is an introduction that needs to happen to her family members and his family members, right? To say this person is a serious person that I'm introducing to the important family members, except for, you know, your, obviously, if your family doesn't want the mother and the father to know about your person, because like Mrs. Shone has said that father was never to set eyes on this man, right? So if your family says, okay, but you need to go introduce this person, so that when that person then goes, when the tete then comes and says, the Numbi, the badge has been left by Mr. So, and he is requiring our daughter's hand in marriage. And then the elders and the delegation will say, yes, we have met such and such a man. And, you know, are we able to go through this? How to mitigate that risk of getting dogs sent on you when you come to the gate? So I think that's important. That step of introduction is quite important for you to have, for you to be able to do all of those other steps as well.
No,
yeah,
great.
and if you're going to do an engagement, she just knows that you've left the jacket. She doesn't even need to know that you left the jacket. Okay, you can still do your surprise engagement with the biggest ring that you can find or the smallest, whatever you can do. And yeah, it will still work out.
Interestingly, Heather, what you have just said is true, that there's a process that must happen. But also, even after that process has happened, where the girl has actually gone to the close people, not necessarily to the parents, and done the introduction with, in the past, the Numbi was a very private affair that happened maybe with the tetes, but now this engagement is causing a lot of controversy, a lot of commotion between children and parents, because after the child or the boy has gone for the introduction to whoever is close to the family, when they do the surprise bit of the engagement, social media, it's out there, and the parents the children get in trouble. How did you get engaged without telling me? How did you accept this boy's ring without me knowing? But maybe the child has gone to the right places to do the introduction. So it's becoming a big bone of contention, these surprise engagements. It's getting a lot of children, a lot of kids in trouble. So I think it's something that's worth also having conversations around. How do our kids navigate that and not get in trouble?
I would like to go back a little bit, very close to what Mike Shone has been talking about in terms of from the Ndebele Nguni side of things. What I know, as far as what I know, is that the exchange does happen, exchange of things, but there's also almost like a cross exchange where quite often it is the woman who is proud of their men to the extent that they do a lot of decorative stuff, which is called like including things like wristbands and the stuff where if you're a guy, you start putting on those, or even on your neck, it actually shows Wuti. There's someone there, there's a girl, because you'll be wearing it proudly because it's been made by someone you love. And other girls, also a way of communicating other girls that, hey, there's a girl around circulating here. It's more almost like marking a territory. So that's where the Ndebele culture is a bit sort of interesting in that, and the word goes very fast. It's also a way of disseminating messages that I don't go nearly. There's someone there, but we haven't known who, as an example. So that's what happens. There's also an exchange of stuff or material, which is also given to or obabagazi, even to ukoko, maikon, abambiza umakulu or ukoko in the normal traditional Ndebele that we know today. There's also that side of things, but in some other areas it differs, because over time, if you go to Gwanda or if you go to Nkai, things are slightly different, but that's actually the general sort of consensus.
No, that's great. And just whilst we're here on you, Levi, there was a question just for you to quickly elaborate on the concept of Ndebele marrying children and not the woman.
It's quite interesting. This is something that I actually learned in high school. Just for the sake of everyone, I think it's going to be confusing that by profession I'm an accountant, but I actually studied Ndebele as a language, Ndebele at A level, and then at A level it's no longer Ndebele, it's actually Zulu. So what happens is in the Nguni, in the deep Nguni culture, is whenever because the purpose of getting to marry a woman is to have a family, which includes children. So childbearing is something that was, maybe today it is, that was really considered very important, to the extent that if, say, you're a man, you can't have children, it's an issue for you. It destroys your ego, and you're not a man. You're not a man enough. So the way they used to prevent that is to actually, if you're gonna get a woman, get someone, either you have made them pregnant or they've been pregnant by someone, but that was hidden. It was not something that was said up front. That legacy continued because for some reason there's something not right with it. I still haven't found out exactly what's not right from the side of the, because it wasn't explained, but it was a requirement that you must, whether it was mischief or whether it was really actually allowed, I don't know. But it used to be a very common practice. Even when I was growing up, I grew up in Material, you would find that a lot of, if I would do statistics, putting the Shona people and the Ndebele people together, you find that there's a lot of what's referred to in Shona as Mvana, more in the Ndebele people than in the Shona people. It all stems from all those kind of things, plus today's societies as well. So that's my 2 cents worth of contribution.
Can I just quickly add on the children, on the marrying of children?
Sorry, Pastor, I know I would love for you to answer this question, but we're actually running out of time, and there's only 2 more questions for us to sort of go through, and then thereafter we'll have to end this. But we've done a great job to make sure that people will actually continue this conversation. Maybe part 2, who knows, if people are interested. But in saying that, a question from More Blessing. So it was, what's the reasonable charge here in Australia? What do people consider when charging? So Pastor, more than happy for you to answer if you would like to answer a question.
Well, they were supposed to be, we actually know them by name if you were in the Ndebele culture. The 8 cows that were maybe 9, we actually can name them. That there's inkomo yaloko, inkomo yalokeana, mombe that and mombe that, and then we can add them up together. Because they have meaning. So this Lobola thing has meaning. I understand that what we need to rebuke is the commercializing, the commodifying in other terms, that has come with it. That needs to be rebuked, whether it's in Australia or in Zimbabwe, that needs to be rebuked, because this Lobola has its own meaning. So to the question that says how much, I cannot say exactly how much, because it depends on where you come from. If you come from Masvingo, ndakanzwa kuti kumasvingo vanoti dhurei kudarika kwedu kwarusapo. So it depends. I'm at a loss really to prescribe what is the meaning for you in your family. What is the meaning of this marriage? Let's have a discussion in our own culture, whether it's Kalanga culture or Sutu culture or Shona culture. And it's a very interesting word, Shona, when you say Shona culture, because the Zezurus are different from the Korekores, and the Korekores are different from the Ndaus. So have a conversation around who you are, around your identity, and say, what does marriage mean to us as a family? And then that number can come up.
No, I think that's fantastic. So contextualize it amongst the people that are involved.
Yeah, Tracy, sorry to interrupt, guys. There's a lady, Trish, that has been raising.
Yes, that's who I was getting next to. So Trish, thank you for being so patient, and thank you to everyone as well for being patient. I know we're 4 minutes above time, but we've got one last question. So Trish, if you can ask your question, and then we'll end with you. I will ask you to unmute.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the time to talk. I'm actually not Trish. I'm Trish's mom. Thank you for, putting all this together. I hope there's going to be a part 2 because it's quite interesting. I've got two girls here, so I'm actually an interested party in this. But coming to my question, I have had conversations with the young people as well, and some of them are actually boys. And their question is, why would we really go and marry our, African girls where there's a lot of this bride price to pay, which is almost equivalent to a deposit of a house, other than just go and marry someone who's local and I don't have to pay anything, because in the African culture, you'd pay this price and then they will then ask for a wedding, which mwana wedu anotoenda nemchato, and it's another expense on top of the maybe 20,000 they would have asked for. So I don't really know what the panelists would think is what has really gone wrong for maybe the boys to be thinking in that way.
Yes, take it away, anyone who's...
As a young person as well, can I answer? And then I think it's very sad because yes, I have heard plenty of young men, my generation, generations below, saying the same thing as well. And I think where a solution lies is probably maybe putting a cap on it. If it's in double digit, it's exploitation. That's as simple as we can put it. Because if the richest man in the world, to give you context, if the richest man in the world can ask for $1,000 for his only daughter, and some people's mothers are asking for 20,000, and on top of that, a whole wedding. You need to take it into context to say, how can we help build a future and build wealth as Zimbabweans as a whole, as Black people as a whole? We need to look at how can we make sure that the number one reason for divorce, which is finances, is not the thing that we're entering our kids into freely, because we want to say, oh, we have gotten the best out of our mukwasha. If your mukwasha cannot afford that money, if he can do tiles here in Australia and he can tile your whole house, that's the Roora done. If he can change your light bulbs, he can paint your house, that's your Roora. Accept, please, our parents.
Heather, can I interrupt you? It's not enough, to be honest, because in Shona they say mukwasha muonde is an encouragement to say that his payment, it just doesn't end with what has been paid or what has been demanded. It's for life. They'll keep on paying.
No, that one I understand. If the mukwasha is always coming to the house, he buys groceries, he comes with something, he comes and he fixes something, he comes and he mows the lawn. Obviously, he's doing his mukwasha duties. As if somebody's future wife, I'm expected when I go to my in-laws' house, I'm cleaning, I'm cooking, I'm making tea, I'm doing all of these things, right? So that's the balance. But where we're talking about this, if your mukwasha can tile your house for you, tiling alone, if you just Google in Australia, how much is a tiler?
Tracy, the conversation has just started.
I agree, Pastor Mserio. I agree.
We're now getting into this. This is the conversation.
That's it for me. That's my only request. So I don't know if one of the elders can say something.
Definitely.
And I want to thank Heather. I want to thank Heather and the exchange with Mr. Mpofu there.
Yeah.
It is actually showing the difference between the generations, and that's where our problem is at, that conversation. And thank you, Heather, for feeling free to actually come out and say that, and Mr. Mpofu to gently challenge, and you challenge each other back like that. Those are very healthy conversations.
Yes, and on that note, we'll have to end it here, but thank you so much to everyone and all the panelists for joining, and because you've triggered a great conversation.
You need to have a part 2 on this.
Part 2 will be coming.
Guys, definitely 1 hour is not enough. Doesn't cut it.
Yes, I think we'll definitely procure it a lot more with people's questions as well. So I think we've enticed a lot of discussions out here. So I'm really glad that's happened. So with that being said, please, everyone, if you can actually complete the evaluation form, I've sent links on the form on the chat. So if you can also complete that, that would be great. And it will help us sort of direct our next sessions in terms of what to do. But before you all end and actually leave, please get your tickets to the Zim Gala, because that is going to be an event that you do not want to miss. But thank you to everyone.
I've got a question. Is this topic going to be part of the Zim Gala event as well, or no?
No, it will not be. So the Zimmer Gala, it's all about fun, having fun.
All right.
So we'll leave it there. So thank you, everyone. So you can all log out now. I can see 52 people still persevering. That's fantastic. But that's
that shows, remember, that this was too short.
Yes,
this was too
definitely.
People were prepared to go for 2 hours.
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to end the meeting now for everyone. So thank you very much. Bye.